Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Robert Adams, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 2, Diane Mason. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, I now invite you to please stand and join in singing the national anthem. You may be seated if you're able. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us during war and on operations over more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private George Caldwell. George was born in 1887 to John and Janet Caldwell of Caldwell, Scotland. He was the second youngest of 8 children. George attended Caldwell Public School and worked as a grocer after leaving school. At the age of 23, he immigrated to Australia, arriving in Brisbane in 1911. In November 1916, Caldwell volunteered for service in the Australian Imperial Force. After being accepted, he travelled south to Sydney and embarked in late December 1916 on board the transport ship Demosthenes. He arrived in England in early March 1917. Caldwell trained at the army camps on Salisbury Plains for several months. He sailed to France, and at the end of July he joined his unit, the 25th Australian Infantry Battalion. At this time, the unit was stationed in the north near the Franco-Belgian border. During August, some of the men of the battalion were detached to help French farmers bring in their harvests. By this time, British commanders had shifted their focus towards the town of Ypres in Belgium. The 25th Battalion was one of many British and Dominion units that were to take part in the campaign to capture this town and its surrounds. In mid-September, the 25th Battalion took part in the Battle of Menin Road, successfully capturing and holding their objectives and pushing the German forces further from Ypres. After spending some time behind the lines, the 25th Battalion came back into the front line in early October. The objective now was to capture the relatively high ground of the Passchendaele Ridge. In the early morning of the 4th of October 1917, Caldwell and the men of the 25th Battalion formed up in the frontline trenches, preparing to capture the small village of Brucinda. Although the battalion captured its objectives, casualties were heavy. Nearly 1 in 4 of its men became a casualty in the battle. During the fighting, Caldwell was struck by shell fragments and killed instantly. He was 29 years old. Private Caldwell was buried where he fell. After the war, his remains were moved to Butte's new British cemetery in Polygon Wood. The cemetery consists of more than 2,000 graves of British and Commonwealth soldiers, most of whom are unidentified. Private George Caldwell is listed in the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private George Caldwell, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you are able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. In the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.